Welcome back to our service. Everyone was shocked when she told them about Lee's favoritism, emotional coldness, and family secrets. The popular socialite's confession showed a side of her that not even Jackie knew about. There are some facts that are too painful to share with humans while they are still alive. The 3rd of March 1933 saw the birth of Lee Radziwill at Doctors Hospital in Manhattan. She was named Caroline Lee Bouvier in full. People knew her father as Black Jack, but his real name was John Vernew Bouvier III. He was a banker. Janet Norton Lee was her beautiful mother with a lot of friends. Jackie was born on July 28, 1929, in Southampton, 4 years before Lee. Sadly, the world they were born into was breaking down. A lot of people lost their jobs during the Great Depression. It was 25% off work in 1933, the same year Lee was born. A lot of people died in the stock market crash of 1929, and the Bouvier were no exception. Blackjack Stock Exchange was just about making it. He lost clients very quickly, and his family had to leave their fancy houses. Nationwide, more than 15,000 banks had fallen by that year. Lee later said that her fear of losing all of her money was caused by her father's risky choices at that time. She wanted stability as a child because she felt like she never had it as a kid. In order to make things look better than they were, the Bouvier stuck to the idea of old money. Blackjack even said they were from the French upper class. Genealogists showed that it was all fake by the 1970s. In reality, they were related to a cabinet maker from the 1800s. That means Lee was born into a world that was already acting like it wasn't going to happen. She was going to try to change that story for the rest of her life. Lee split her time between an apartment on Park Avenue and a big house in East Hampton from the time she was 3 years old, in 1936. Still, things were a mess behind the glitz. Her dad drank a lot. He finished a bottle of whiskey every day by the late 1930s. In high society, people talked about his relationships and violent moods. His actions were reported in 1935 for stealing $100,000 from family trusts. They were almost destroyed by that. He lost his job on Wall Street in 1938, and rumors spread that he had been dealing on inside information. Everything fell apart when Lee's parents split up in 1940. The little girl was only 7. Her mom said Black Jack was mean to her. Even though Black Jack owed $200,000, the courts gave her full custody and made him pay her $1,000 a month in alimony. The incident was all over the news, and Lee will never forget it. There was a quick change in where Lee and Jackie were living, being surrounded by stress. A second marriage for Janet happened in 1942. On this occasion, it was Hugh D. Auchincloss, an oil owner worth more than $50 million. More kids were born because of the new marriage. Hugh Shaw was born in 1927, and half-siblings Janet and Jamie were born in 1945 and 1947. Lee didn't feel accepted in this new world. 10 was how old she was. She fought with her new stepsisters and brothers because she was afraid of who would get what in the future. She once said that those years taught her not to believe anything other people say. She said she vowed to never be weak again after her father passed out drunk at a family event in 1942, making her look bad in front of everyone. In the summer, Lee stayed at La Sada, a 7-acre mansion in East Hampton. That $50,000 her grandpa paid for it in 1925. It had ocean views from all 8 beds. There were famous people staying with the family. By 1937, Lee had met the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers, among others. What looked beautiful from the outside was actually very tense on the inside. Jackie was the star. She was 4 years older. Jackie won a contest to ride a pony in 1940. She was 7 years old when Lee cried when she lost. Significant Bouvier, their grandfather, died in 1948 with a $1 million debt, and the family had to sell La Soda in 1950. Afterward, Lee said that a place's beauty never meant it was peaceful. There was a fight at La Soda one night in 1939 because people were drunk. On that night, she found out that high society wasn't always what it seemed like. In 1938, when they were 5 years old, and Jackie were already being dressed for pictures in clothes that matched, their mother was totally focused on looks. She spent $500 a year on clothes, even when times were hard. After the split in 1941, she paid $200 a session to take both girls to ballet class. Everyone thought Jackie looked better. Lee was really hurt by that. Not long after turning 17, she had surgery on her nose to make her look different. She learned how to copy the styles that would make her famous by the time she went to Miss Porter's school in 1947. Although the style was a mask, she tore a dress one day in 1939, so her mother locked her in the closet for hours. Lee began to hide her pain behind perfect looks and clothes after that. She went to Chapin School in Manhattan for the first few years, and then the Potomac School in Washington, D.C. She started at Miss Porter's in Connecticut in 1947. It cost $1,500 a year to go there. We are talking about more than $20,000 now. She could draw and act well. Although her 1950 yearbook said nice things about how creative she did poorly in math and history. In contrast, Jackie got all A's. She even won a 1951 writing contest from Vogue. They said Lee was smart but crazy. Back in 1949, she skipped schoolwork to find thrills and got in trouble twice a week. Being compared to Jackie made her mad, so she started looking for her own way out. In 1948, when he was 15, Lee began to fight. During one quarter, she missed 12 classes. She was kicked out of school for 2 weeks on October 15, 1948, for smoking Marlboros behind the dorms. Surprise people. They respected her as a daughter. It was even worse that she was said to have a boyfriend named Peter who was 20 years old. She missed school on November 5, 1948, so her mother could have an important talk with her. Unfortunately, it did not work. She climbed out of a window in February 1949 and hitched a ride 10 miles to a party. It was dawn when she came back, messy and happy. In that year, her dad paid $500 to clean up after her, but he still said Jackie was his best. Forging notes, missing 18 days, and almost losing her $50 a month allowance were things she did in 1950. That year, Lee started to move away from the ideal Bouvier look. People started to pay attention. The family of her stepfather had owned Hammersmith Farm in Newport since 1887 and had 28 rooms where she spent the summers. $100,000 bought it. She started to learn how to ride horses in 1941. She had won a ribbon on a pony named Dancer by 1946. She had governesses teach her French and manners, but she never felt like she fit in. It was worth more than $10 million to be her dad. Her half-siblings Janet and Jamie were born in 1945 and 1947, respectively. She stayed upstairs at a big party on August 15, 1948, because she didn't want to be seen. That was in 1950, when she stopped helping with work. They went sailing together without permission on July 3, 1951, and she was stuck alone for hours. During the month of June 1949, her dad discovered her sneaking alcohol. There was then a family fight. Although there were picnics and boats, Lee felt stuck in a life that wasn't her own. Lee Radziwill didn't like being someone's sister. She quietly began working with Giorgio Armani in the early 1960s, when most people still thought of her in terms of Jackie Kennedy. Starting out, it wasn't official. While she was moving around Milan, she wore his custom-made clothes. At an event in 1982, she wore a black and white striped top and a velvet skirt that got a lot of attention. By 1980, she fixed things, taking over as head of special events for Armani. In 1985, she was making $50,000 a year at this job, which was her first real job. Even though it doesn't sound like much now, it was shocking for someone born into a wealthy family back then. She used her good looks and Hollywood contacts to get Armani work. At a party in 1980, she even put him in touch with Richard Gere. Armani's U.S. sales went from $10 million to $135 million in just a few years. Even though Jackie allegedly didn't like it because she liked American designers more, she helped him dress Oscar winners. But for Lee, this was her chance to prove herself. She took another big step forward in 1966 when she worked with Truman Capote on a ladies' home journal fashion story. The articles caught people by surprise right away. Lee said she stole Jackie's Givenchy dresses in 1961 when money was tight and even brought them into the White House against JFK's orders. She said she only spent $20,000 a year on clothes and would sometimes pawn her jewelry for up to $5,000 to look nice. Capote provided her with ideas for writing about her 1962 trip to India, such as the Yves Saint Laurent dress she wore in 1 to 200 Howie talents. The pieces came out in July 1966 and were read by 2 million people. Tensions rose when Lee said she always felt unsafe around Jackie, whose yearly clothing budget was $100,000, 5 times Lee's. Her fame grew because of the relationship, but it also made her more exposed. There were rumors that Capote loved her more than she knew. When he later told private stories in a magazine article in 1975, they stopped being friends for good. Rolling Stone magazine gave her a lot of attention in February 1962 and called her the chic Radziwill. There were 15 pictures on 10 pages, and she was wearing a Yves Saint Laurent $3,500 Mondrian dress in one of them. Leading a fancy life, she wore $800 turbines and $2,000 skirts. Within one story, she lost a $500 shoe while riding a camel in Pakistan in 1961. The story made her stand out, and it led to 40% more sales for YSL in the US. But it got her into trouble with Jackie, who hit her during a fight a month later. Jackie wore a similar YSL dress to a White House dinner that same year to show she didn't like it. There was even fighting over clothes between the girls. In 1967, Lee started her own clothing line. She put $80,000 into it and hoped to sell 1,000 items a month by offering $150 turbines and $200 scarves at Bloomingdale's. Unfortunately, everything went wrong. 500 pieces were wrecked by a dye problem in July, which cost her $100,000 by December. The line was overpriced, and only 300 things were sold. Shipments from Italian companies were late. She lost another $20,000 because stock was sent back. The business failed, even though she got $50,000 from her Bloomingdale's deal. Her first attempt at playing didn't work out, so she switched careers and became an interior designer. Between 1959 and 1970, she did a number of risky picture shoots for Cecil Beaton. The magazine Vogue showed her in $1,200 men's clothes in 1966. There were rumors about her sexuality based on some of the pictures. A photo shoot in 1964 showed her makeup wet with tears, just a few months after JFK's death. Beaton told her that she was 1,000,000 times more beautiful than Jackie. But the reports got stronger when Andy Warhol said in 1970 that she might be bisexual. These pictures, which were in 15 mags, helped make her look cool and edgy. After she got divorced in 1974, they stopped working together. In the same year, Truman Capote denied she knew him. He put out a chapter in Esquire in November 1975 called La Côte Basque, 1965. It used made-up names but clear facts to tell stories about his wealthy friends, including Lee. Over the course of their 20-year friendship, he told her private things. Lee was very upset. She considered suing, but the writing was too well hidden. It was even true that Capote wrote a play just for her, but now she was cutting him off, just like Slim Keith. An age ended, and he died by himself in 1984. Additionally, in 1974, she tried her hand at writing, working on a book called One Special Summer about their trip to Europe in 1951 with Jackie's help. Two companies didn't like the first drafts because they gave away too much about their past, including hints about short-term relationships. They made it less harsh, and Delacorte Press finally put it out there. Even though 10,000 copies were sold, reviewers said it wasn't very good. It did, however, give Lee a new goal. After that, she wrote more books, such as Lee in 2015 and Happy Times in 2000. Even though she always said the early drafts were much better. Lee started an interior design business after getting divorced from Prince Stanislaw Radziwill in 1974. She quickly did well. She worked on Baron Guy de Rothschild's Paris apartment for more than $500,000 in 1974, which is about $3 million today. The rich French people were shocked by her Indian-inspired silks. She made $2 million a year by the late 1970s, doing work for people like Stavros Niarchos. In 1980, she took her business to New York, where it had 15 big jobs a year and a $10 million portfolio. Still, some people said that she only worked with people who had names and didn't care about the new rich. In 1975, she changed the look of the Pierre Hotel in New York's high-end rooms. A $27 million jewel heist had just happened there. Lee put secret safes in furniture, like a $50,000 bed frame that has drawers hidden inside it. The price of one suite included a $200,000 escape room that looked like a closet and had bulletproof glass. Some people thought it was too much, but others loved how beautiful and safe it was at the same time. By 1978, the Pierre had brought her $1.5 million, and she went on to build 10 more hotels in the same style. Happy Times, her autobiography, didn't come out until 2003, but she had begun writing it in the early 1980s. The early drafts were very powerful. She wrote in 1982 about a fight she had with Jackie in 1962 over a $10,000 loan and how Jackie wouldn't help her. In 1983, lawyers for the Kennedy family got involved and told her she could be fined $500,000 if she published. She changed the drafts. But in 1984, some pages got out that showed stories of drama and jealousy, such as Jackie's anger over Lee's marriage to a prince in 1959. She made $1 million from selling 50,000 copies of the book in just 1 month after it came out. She got back into fashion in 1980 as Armani's public relations manager, where she made $200,000 a year, $500,000 by 1985. The movie American Gigolo, which came out in 1988 and made $52 million, made her famous in Hollywood. Marc Jacobs paid her $300,000 to sign contract. But when Jacobs put out an ad of Lee in a revealing pose in 1985, it caused a storm. It was taken down because of complaints, which cost $1 million in lost ads. Some people thought she was using the Kennedy name to get attention. Conservative groups stopped doing business with Jacobs in 1986, but she kept working in fashion. Along with 20 projects by 1989, she helped over 30 young designers from 1975 to 1985. But in 1987, talks came out in which she said she turned down 15 applicants in 1984 because they didn't have the right breeding. She said balance was more important than skill. In 1988, the American Society of Interior Designers sent 200 angry letters and said bad things about it. 20% fewer people applied to work for her company. An ex-mentee sued her for $100,000 in 1990 because she was fired for not fitting in. She did, however, start a few successful careers. One artist went on to work for the Rothschilds. When the story ended in 1989, though, she had lost 3 important clients. It was clear that Lee and Prince Radziwill were no longer married on July 23, 1974, after being separated for 2 years. Before he died in 1976, he had affairs with younger women and owed $30 million. Lee lost her title as princess and had to sell family heirlooms in 1975 to make money. A Polish saber from the 1800s went for $8,000, and she also sold other things worth $50,000. She began dating lawyer Peter Tufo and got more work as an interior designer to make money. Anthony and Tina, her children, were taken care of by Jackie because their father's wealth was worthless. She began seeing Aristotle Onassis in 1963, right as her marriage was coming apart. He gifted her a diamond bracelet worth $10,000 and let her spend time on his boat, the Christina. However, Jackie took over in October. There was a fight over Onassis at London's Claridge's Hotel that same year, and Jackie is said to have hit Lee. Although Lee later said she had no plans to marry him, he did marry Jackie in 1968. The feud was proven by letters from 1964. The affair became public after a rumor in the July 1963 New York Post. In September 1988, Lee got married again. This time, to Herbert Ross, a movie director best known for making Footloose. The couple was married for 55 years and 61 years, but by 1995, he was too controlling. She wasn't allowed to hang out with Truman Capote's friends, and he told her what to wear. Lee said in court documents from 2001 that he listened in on her calls and kept her from going out, which made her depressed in 1999. On October 15, 2001, they got a divorce. Shortly after, Ross died of heart failure at age 74. Lee got $5 million from the deal, but they lost their $12 million home in the Hamptons. In the late 1970s, drugs took over her life and made it go crazy. In 1977, she first used cocaine at parties at Studio 54. She said she did it almost every night in biographies from 1980. It was seen that she had passed out on the dance floor in July 1978 after mixing cocaine and Valium. In 1979, her name was found in records linked to $800 worth of drugs during a club raid. She took too many Quaaludes in 1975 and had to go to Lenox Hill Hospital to have her stomach pumped. After a public breakdown in Southampton in 1981, she joined AA. At 5 feet 6 inches, she had dropped to just 95 pounds. Truman Capote's own drug use only made things worse. She began her recovery in 1982, but her bond with Jackie grew strained. In 1970, She borrowed $100,000 from Jackie to buy a London apartment and promised to repay it in a year. But by 1975, it was still unpaid. Jackie grew frustrated, especially after Lee defaulted on a $20,000 rental. Interest raised the debt up to $150,000 by 1980. In 1985, Jackie leaked the story to Vanity Fair, calling her sister a moocher. When Jackie died in 1994, she left nothing to Lee in her will. She wrote that Lee had already received support. But when Lee died in 2019, her own estate was worth $50 million. She left nothing to the Kennedy family. One of the worst fights happened in 1973 when Lee secretly sold gifted jewelry for $15,000. Jackie found out and filed a court affidavit. Their relationship never fully recovered. Lee Radziwill spent her whole life competing with her older sister, Jackie Kennedy. It started when they were young and never really ended. In 1951, when Lee was just 18, she took Jackie's boyfriend, Michael Canfield. Jackie had been serious about him. Their mother was so upset, she had to sit Lee down and talk to her about loyalty. But Lee didn't stop there. She married Canfield in 1953. That marriage didn't last. It ended in 1958 after rumors came out that Lee had been unfaithful. Then in 1962, Lee started seeing Aristotle Onassis. But 6 years later, in 1968, Jackie married him instead. Lee claimed she had introduced Onassis to Jackie. It was another painful reminder that she always came second. In private, Lee told Truman Capote in 1962 that she was obsessively jealous of her sister's success and status. Even though she told People magazine in 1976 that they were exceptionally close, people who knew them said there was always tension, whether it was about men, money, or fame. Lee was born on March 3, 1933. Jackie was born July 28, 1929. Lee was always following behind. When President John F. Kennedy was shot in Dallas on November 22, 1963, Lee flew from London to Washington the next day. She stayed with Jackie for weeks. During the funeral on November 25th, Lee cried hard as the plane flew over Arlington Cemetery. That night, she left a note on Jackie's pillow saying, "Good night, my darling Jax, the bravest and noblest of all." She stayed until December 6th and spent Christmas with Jackie in Palm Beach. But 5 years later, Jackie married Onassis on October 20th, 1968. Lee felt deeply hurt. She had dated him first in 1962. She went to the wedding, but something inside her broke. In public, she still denied any rivalry. But the pain from Jackie's choices stayed with her for decades. That night in 1963, when she had cried for Jackie, turned into something else by 1968, something colder. Things got even harder between Lee and her own daughter, Tina. Tina was born on August 18, 1960. By the mid-1970s, Lee was criticizing her teenage daughter's weight, especially around 1975 and 1976. It hurt Tina deeply. When she was 17, in 1977, Tina moved out and went to live with Jackie in New York. Lee had just gone through a divorce in 1974 from Prince Stanislaus Radziwill. Her life was falling apart. By 1975, she was already bankrupt. Tina's father wasn't helping much either. Jackie stepped in and set up trust funds for both Tina and her brother Anthony in 1976. But the move to Jackie's home made the distance between mother and daughter permanent. Even after all this, when Lee died in 2019, she left everything to Tina. Her will was signed on September 20th, 2018. It gave Tina $50 million. But Tina later said in a 2024 video that the money didn't make up for the emotional coldness she had grown up with. In 1994, Jackie Kennedy died. Her will shocked everyone. She left Lee nothing, not a single dollar. The will said, "I've made no provision in this, my will, for my sister, Lee B. Radziwill, for whom I have great affection, because I have already done so during my lifetime." But insiders believed it was revenge. Rumors had swirled since 1962 that Lee had been involved with JFK, even before his death. That same year, Lee had also introduced Jackie to Onassis. And Jackie never forgot. The will gave $500,000 to Lee's children, Anthony and Tina, but nothing to Lee herself. Jackie's total estate was worth over $43 million and went entirely to her children, Caroline and John Jr. born in 1957 and 1960. By then, Lee and Jackie hardly spoke. What Lee had once denied so strongly rivalry was confirmed with silence. In the early 1980s, they tried to repair things. Around 1982 and 1983, they met for lunches and exchanged letters. But it didn't last. A 1983 letter from Jackie to Lee brought everything crashing down. Jackie accused Lee of having an affair with Robert F. Kennedy, her brother-in-law. The affair supposedly began during a vacation in Antigua. In January 1964, FBI files even backed the rumors, saying the affair lasted until 1968. Lee had denied this in a 1976 interview, but the damage was done. Ethel Kennedy was heartbroken when she found out in 1984. By 1994, Jackie cut Lee out of her will. The past couldn't be erased. Gore Vidal later said Lee once bragged about sleeping with JFK in France in 1959. That made the betrayal even worse. By the early 2000s, quietly stepped away from the spotlight. In 2001, she sold her Hamptons home for $3.5 million and moved to a quiet apartment on Avenue Montaigne in Paris. Her glamorous days with Warhol and Capote were long gone. In 2015, when she was 82, Lee was rushed to the hospital in New York. The family didn't say what caused it, but people close to her whispered that she had been drinking heavily for years, sometimes finishing 2 bottles of wine a day. She had already survived cancer in the 1990s and had a hysterectomy in 1990. After the 2015 hospitalization, she returned to Paris and became even more reclusive. By 2016, she had cut herself off from almost everyone. On February 15, 2019, Lee Radziwill died in her Manhattan apartment. She was 85. Her daughter, Tina, was the only one at her bedside. Her son, Anthony, had died in 1999 at age 40 from cancer. No one else from the Kennedy family came to say goodbye. Her funeral on February 25th had only 50 guests. Medical bills of $200,000 were unpaid when she passed. There were rumors that she hadn't spoken to old friends like Rudolf Nureyev's circle in years. Her death certificate, filed on February 20th, 2019, said no autopsy was done. It only listed natural causes. Tina had to handle everything alone. 5 months before her death, on September 20th, 2018, Lee signed her final will. It revealed a $50 million estate, all of it left to Tina. The will was made public on March 22, 2019. Neither Caroline Kennedy nor Lee's daughter-in-law, Carol Radziwill, got anything. Carol, whose husband Anthony had died in 1999, filed a lawsuit in April 2019. She said Lee had promised her $10 million from the family trust. Caroline Kennedy, worth $250 million, joined the legal battle in June 2019, saying Lee had once promised her $5 million back in 1995. Lee's fortune included $20 million in Paris real estate, $15 million in jewelry, and $15 million in old investments. People had thought she was broke. In 2017, she sold a diamond ring for $150,000 just to pay taxes. But it turned out she had been hiding money for years. The lawsuits ended in 2021. Tina kept 80% and paid out $8 million to settle everything. That betrayal reminded people of Lee's old jealousy when Jackie inherited $26 million from Onassis in the 1970s. In October 2019, Christie's auctioned over 500 of Lee's belongings. The sale brought in $1.2 million, but what shocked everyone were the letters. One from 1962 showed Jackie accusing Lee of selling White House secrets for $5,000. Another from 1973 revealed Jackie's anger over Lee's relationship with Onassis, saying it cost her $10 million in legal settlements. A letter from 1959 had Lee begging Jackie for $100,000 to help with her divorce. The auction drew over 2,000 viewers online. Some of the biggest bids were for Peter Beard photos and Spanish art pieces. One letter confirmed they had fought in 1974 over the rights to the Grey Gardens documentary. Even Jackie's old photos from India in 1961 sold for $20,000. The rivalry never stopped. After Lee's death, her daughter Tina finally spoke out. In a 2024 interview, Tina said she always felt invisible. Lee favored Anthony, especially after his cancer diagnosis in 1990. Tina said that grief consumed her mother and left her feeling left out. The confession came out on May 30th, 2025, in a YouTube video. Tina said Lee never gave her emotional support, even though she left her the full estate. She also said the favoritism affected her marriage and her identity. She divorced in 2005. Tina said she stayed quiet for years out of respect, but the truth had to come out.